If you're an org admin, you'll be looking after your organization's preferences. The preferences have a hierarchy, so let's take a look at that now. Essentially, preferences start at the top level and flow down. Not all preferences flow down because they might only relate to a specific level. It's likely that you'll never need to change too many preferences, but it's good to understand the hierarchy. At the top, we have the Aconex preferences that are controlled by, you've guessed it, Aconex. These are not accessible by anyone else and they control a lot of the default preferences and suit most organizations and most projects. Next, we have organization preferences. The defaults at this level filter down from the Aconex preferences, but you can change and override certain ones. You can also lock certain preferences at this level to prevent changes at the project and user levels below. Then we have project level preferences. Again, the defaults at this level filter down from the levels above, but you can change and override certain ones. And as with the org preferences, you can lock certain ones to prevent changes at the user level below. Finally, we have the user level preferences. Anyone who has an Aconex account can change certain preferences that relate to just themselves, and we cover those in more detail in another video. As we've said before, you probably won't be changing the preferences a lot, but it's good to know how the hierarchy works and how each level can affect the one below. So what is a project admin and how is it different from an org admin? Let's explain. Let's look at what a project admin can do. We'll open up user role settings in the setup area. You'll need to be an org admin to begin with to see this page, and the org admin is the one that typically controls all the settings you see here. By default, every organization is provided with a set of roles, and we cover those in another video. The org admin role is the only one that cannot be changed, but the other roles can be changed and even renamed, although most organizations don't bother. Notice the one called project admin. Then compare it with a regular user, the basic plus role. Notice how the project admin has the ability to control a lot of the options. The project admin role is almost the same as an org admin, but with a couple of org-based settings unavailable. By default, all users assigned the org admin role are automatically project admins for any projects that their organizations own. The owning organization is usually the organization that's paying for Aconex. What this means in practice is that users can be provided with the ability to manage a project and its settings without them being able to manage their organization. Now, there are no hard and fast rules here, just the flexibility and the option to have some users managing the organizational side of things and others the project side. Make sure you check out our user admin course for all the details about user roles. The project admin role controls settings related to the project. Let's take a look. We'll open the project settings and then we'll focus on the project details. At the top, you can change the project name and its code. The short name is the one that appears in places like the project list on the task page and the project selector at the top of the screen. Be careful when changing the project name, especially if you're changing it to something that's very different. We'd always recommend letting the project team know of any changes in advance to help avoid any confusion. The project type is optional. Typically, it's used to indicate the industry sector that the project relates to. The primary register type is set when the project is created and can't be changed. It allows the document register to be renamed and used for other purposes like assets and interface management. When you make this change, the field labels will also change. For example, document number becomes asset number. Then there's the access level. The drop-down option lets you decide if newly invited organizations get only read access to the project. Clicking the Edit button allows you to configure the organisations that have already been invited. With read-only access, organisations can receive and read project mail and updated documents, but they cannot send mail, upload or supersede documents. This type of access is really useful for projects that only store project reference materials, such as occupational health and safety documentation. You can also use archive access for organisations that no longer have active involvement with your project. Using this setting, they cannot receive mail or updated documents. They're also not visible in the project directory and cannot be re-invited to the project unless the project owner reinstates a normal access level for them. Next is the Contacts section, where you can add relevant details about the project. This information is shown in the directory, so it's always a good idea to make sure the information is correct and up to date. Then you have a start and end date, but don't worry too much about this as it won't affect the team's access to the information or project. Lastly, you can also include a brief project description. In summary, this page is about information, and we recommend checking the details regularly to make sure they're up to date. A crucial part of managing project information is controlling what people can and cannot do. Let's start by opening the project settings and then looking at mail and document role settings. These roles are project specific and control what people from an organisation can do in terms of what mail types they can create and send, what document types they can upload, and the status they can apply to documents. Essentially, these roles and settings provide a tailored experience for each organisation and make sure that they only have access to the things they really need. Think of them as being a little bit like a user or an organisational profile. As part of each implementation, we'll help you set up some roles. Here are some examples. But you can change and adapt them as the project progresses to match any changes in your requirements. You can even create new ones. So let's start by doing that. We click here to create a new role. The first thing we need to do is give the role a meaningful name. Typically, roles are used to control a functional role like a consultant or subcontractor. Let's create one for the various consulting organisations on this project. The Set as Default option is something we'll come back to in a moment. The three tabs will focus on mail types, doc types and doc statuses. On the left, you'll see a list of mail types, and on the right are the types that are made available to this role. Let's select a couple of types. We'll just click and use the arrows to move them across or double click a type. The Show All checkbox will list all available types, and these will differ depending on where in the world you're logging into Aconex. You can start by typing in part of a name to filter the list of types, and then you can add more types as you see fit. Next, you can do the same for doc types, and then doc statuses. The process is the same. Once you're done, you click OK to save the role. To assign the role to an organisation, just tick the box for the organisation under the relevant role. If you tick more than one role for an organisation, they'll get all the types from the selected roles. A word of warning here. Don't be tempted to add lots of mail types, doc types and statuses. It's always best to keep the available types as few as possible because it helps reduce mistakes. Too much choice generally confuses people, and if the list is very long, they often end up just picking something near the top of the list. What you'll need to do as a project administrator is to make sure that as organisations are invited to the project, they're assigned to the relevant role. If you forget to do this, they may end up with incorrect mail and document types. We can use the default setting to help reduce the chances of this happening. We'll edit one of the roles to show you what to do. The checkbox here means that any newly invited organisation will automatically be assigned this role. We recommend that you create a basic role that has the bare minimum types added to it and then make that the default. Like this one here. That way, if you forget to assign them, at least they'll have access to some basic document types and mail types. Finally, there is the Copy from Project button. This can be a big time saver if you've already spent some time setting them up previously. As a project administrator, you'll need to manage the various document fields. Let's take a look. Fields are what allow us to capture additional information about documents, effectively tagging them so that we can quickly and easily retrieve them later on. These can be found under Project Settings. Then we'll need to expand the Documents section and open Document Fields. You'll see plenty of fields and plenty of options. When your project is first created, our team will help you decide what fields are used and how they're configured. But, as with roles, the project administrator can make changes as the project requirements change. Let's start by moving through the columns that we can see. First is Label. This shows us the name of the field as it will appear to users when they're in the document register. This label or name should be easy to understand for everyone, otherwise tagging and classification mistakes will happen. In this example, we can see some field labels that have yet to be used and named. Next is the Use Field column, and it determines if the field is available for use in the register. In other words, is it being used? Use the checkboxes to make a field available for use. Then, the Mandatory column allows us to specify if a field must be completed when uploading or superseding documents. Mandatory fields cannot be left blank. Use the checkboxes to make a field mandatory. Some of the fields can't be changed, and these are the minimum fields required to use Aconex. Some of the label names can be changed, but you'll need to contact our service desk team to get them to unlock them for you. Next are field types. These allow us to capture information in different ways. We have text fields, single and multi-select lists, dates, numbers, and checkboxes. Most of these also have character limits too. For example, the document title field allows a maximum of 255 characters. As an administrator, it's your job to ensure that the fields are configured correctly and maintained. We always recommend keeping everything as simple as possible, and that means not using any more fields than is absolutely necessary. More fields means more administration and potentially more confusion for the project team. One of the things you'll probably need to do more often than anything else is to manage the values in the single and multi-select list fields. It's likely that these will need to change over the life of the project. So let's open up the list for one of the fields, the one for discipline. You can see that this field already has some values. These values are what users see whenever they upload or supersede a document. You can add new values like this. Just add each value on a new line. When you're done, click Add. Simple. Because this is a single select list, we need to include a code for each value. These codes are used with the auto-numbering feature, and you can find out more about that feature on Support Central. If we want to remove a value, we use the checkboxes on the right and click Save, like this. It's important to remember that once a value is used to tag a document, it will always remain in the register for searching purposes, even though it can no longer be selected for new or updated documents. That's why you need to be very careful about adding values without considering if you really need them, and make sure that you double check the spelling of any unusual values. Document fields are relatively simple to understand, but their configuration and management can easily get complicated and cause confusion. Only capture what you really need to and try to minimize any changes. The setup and configuration of Aconex can become complex. That's why we recommend documenting it. We understand the importance of project-related documentation, drawings, specifications, reports, and so on. This is the documentation we need to get the project built. But what about the documentation that tells you about the systems and processes we use to run the project? Any project team will use a variety of systems and processes to complete the project, and making sure that everyone on the project understands these systems and processes is critical. Each project should have documentation that details how the systems are configured and how information should be managed. This would include documenting key processes like drawing reviews or how RFIs are dealt with. As a minimum, we recommend you document two things: the configuration of Aconex and any key processes. The first will detail how Aconex is set up, things like document fields and what's required to be entered into them, mail types and what they're used for, review statuses and when they're used, field values for things like the list of disciplines. Keep the documentation simple and concise, and most of all, keep it updated with any changes to the Aconex configuration and setup. The second is about documenting key processes. This is often overlooked because it's assumed everyone knows what they're doing. Don't make that mistake. Again, keep the documentation simple and concise. It can even be a single-page flow diagram like this one. Feel free to pause the video to take a closer look. We even have some templates for common processes on Support Central. These documents will help in understanding how the information is structured and help everyone when searching for the information, along with guidance to make sure processes run smoothly. Let's take a look at some of the features and options that help us look after users on a project. We'll start by looking at how we can invite others to a project. We'll open up the project preferences and then switch to the project tab. Then we scroll down to the invitation method. The default option is open. This means that anyone on the project can invite anyone else simply by sending them a mail from the project. They're then added immediately to the project as a full user. The only proviso is that they have to have a valid Aconex user account. Remember to uncheck the default box if you need to. This will allow you to select a different option from the drop-down. Next we have restricted. This allows anyone on the project to invite someone else via a piece of mail, but instead of adding them immediately to the project as a full user, it adds them as a shadow user on the project. This means they cannot be seen by others on the project, but you can change this. We'll take a look at how you can do this soon. The last option is explicit. When this is chosen, people cannot invite others using mail. Only the administrator can invite or add new users to a project. This is useful if the project is of a sensitive nature and it's been decided that only the administrators can add new people. But this means there is an increased amount of admin. Plus, you'll need to figure out the best way of understanding who to add to the project and when. So we can add anyone to a project by sending them a piece of mail, but with the explicit option, that task is left to the administrator. Let's open the list of projects. We can manually add other people using the menu here. Hover over the row for your project until the three dots appear. To add or invite someone, we click here. You need to be very careful when searching the global directory. There are lots of users and organisations, and it's very easy to confuse similar names and companies. Make sure you found the right person before adding them to the project. We can also choose to send them an email letting them know they've been added. Just edit the text and invite them. Next, if someone has been invited by mistake to a project, we can remove them. We select them like this, then click Remove. You'll be asked to confirm, and that's it. If someone has left your company and you just need to make sure they can no longer access project information, just disable and lock their user account. Earlier, we mentioned shadow users. That's what happens when you have the invitation mode set to restricted. Both user types have access to the project, but the shadow user cannot be seen by others in the project directory. In this column, we can see two types of icon. They indicate if they can be seen or not seen in the directory. To change the visibility, we select the users and click the button. This kind of administration can be easy to forget, and that's why we recommend in another video that Aconex be included in any related processes for when someone starts or leaves your company. That way it's a task that isn't forgotten. Let's finish this course with a recap of what we've covered and what's next. But first of all, congratulations. If you've completed all the lessons and topics in this course, well done. We know it's hard sometimes finding the time to learn new things. Here's what we've covered. There were 3 lessons. We covered the various project settings and preferences. We took a look at updating the configuration of a project along with the various roles and document fields. And then we finished off by discussing how to manage the project participants. So, what's next? Well, you've completed course 2. You then have 3 more courses to complete if you want to finish the specialist level learning. Next, we have courses that look at user and workflow administration. Good luck and happy learning.